I am sorry for harming the trust that I and so many others have worked so hard to build, and I will begin working to build that trust back today.
Today, Oregon Secretary of State gave her first public comment since a cannabis consulting controversy came to light last week. Shemia Fagan took a side job as a paid consultant for the owners of a troubled marijuana dispensary chain. Willamette Week reports that Fagan started working for the owners of La Mota in February and was being paid $10,000 a month. She terminated that contract, she says, yesterday. Court records show La Mota and associated businesses have racked up millions of dollars in unpaid taxes and have been sued repeatedly for not paying bills. At the same time, the owners made big political donations to top Democrats, including Ms. Fagan. She said she only consulted on the company's projects outside of Oregon. What makes the situation even more messy is that as Secretary of State, Fagan oversees state audits. And that included an audit on Oregon's regulation of the cannabis industry, that very industry that she was consulting for. Last week, the audit director explained that Fagan recused herself from the involvement after taking the consulting job. And here's how Fagan responded today.
I diligently followed all Oregon government ethics published guidelines for private employment for public officials. I look forward to the Ethics Commission because they will confirm that I faithfully followed Oregon's ethics rules and laws. I'm even more eager for the Department of Justice to publish their findings because I know that they will verify that the hardworking auditors in the Oregon Audits Division conducted their work with independence and integrity.
Prior to taking the consulting gig in February, emails indicate that Fagan indeed reached out to a state ethics investigator asking for, quote, clarity of conflicts of interest, end quote. Today, she said she talked with Ethics Commission staff 3 times to make sure that she really understood the ins and outs. State law bars public officials from using their positions for personal gain.
You know, I think the first step to rebuilding trust is to admit when you've broken trust in the first place. And that's what I'm here to do today, to admit when I made a mistake. Those who know me personally know that whether it's as a mom or a partner or a friend, I don't always get it right. But when I don't, I own it, I reflect and learn, and I seek to repair. And that's what I'm going to be doing with Oregonians for the next 2 years.
Republican leaders accused Fagan of committing major ethics violations and called on her to resign, surprising absolutely no one. Obviously, it does not appear that is happening. So why would Fagan even consider taking a side gig when she already had a Secretary of State job? Well, the simple answer is elected officials are people too, with their own lives away from the intense public spotlight.
I'm starting over financially after a divorce. I have 2 young kids. I have student loans and other bills. I'm a renter in the expensive Portland metro area, and I'm the sole income earner in my household. So, to put it bluntly, my Secretary of State salary alone is not enough for me to make ends meet. I am deeply honored to serve as Oregon Secretary of State, regardless of the compensation.
Fagan makes $77,000 a year as Secretary of State. She also teaches part-time at Willamette University. Now, it is a little unusual, but it's certainly not unheard of for a statewide elected official to have a side job. That got us thinking about salaries for elected officials. You know what? They're not as much as you probably think. As we started to do our research, we realized our friends at the Oregonian were a step ahead of us, and we think their article is certainly worth your time. Jamie Goldberg and David Kanzler put this together. The headline sells it a little bit short because they have a table where you can actually see the pay for all of the 49,000 state employees, not just those who make over $100,000. We're going to get a little numbers heavy here, so accountants rejoice, and for everyone else, hang in. We're going to keep it simple. It's going to be interesting, and we're going to have some graphics to help us all understand. It's important to note that we're looking at base pay here. That does not include benefits or anything like that, just the base salary. Here's how the numbers stack up. More than 7,000 state employees receive base pay of at least 6 figures, $100,000 or more. 31 of those make more than $300,000 and 2 make more than $400,000. The highest paid state employee is Rex Kim, the chief investment officer for the state treasury. He makes more than $500,000 in base pay alone. The other top 10 earning state employees include other investment officials with the treasury and psychiatrists at the state hospital. Meanwhile, the lowest paid full-time worker was a human service specialist in the Department of Human Services who made under $34,000. That's just over $16 an hour. If you'd like to check the statewide salary database for yourself, head over to the Oregonian's website to find the story. Now, at last check, it is behind a paywall, but listen, if you're into stories like this and if you enjoy watching the story, our show, the journalists over there at the Oregonian, they do a great job, and it's certainly worth the price of a subscription. But let's get back to the salary comparisons for some of Oregon's elected officials. Remember, the base pay for Secretary of State, $77,000. She's the auditor of all public accounts, the chief elections officer, the public records administrator, the chair of the Oregon Sustainability Board, and helps the governor and treasurer supervise and manage state-owned lands. Oh, and by the way, since Oregon does not have a lieutenant governor, if for some reason the governor's office becomes vacant, the Secretary of State is next in line. That's how Kate Brown first became governor. The salaries of the governor, secretary of state, state treasurer, and attorney general are all set by state law that was last updated in 2014. Oregon Code Chapter 292, Section 311, the governor makes $98,600 every year and then gets an additional $1,000 per month for expenses. Secretary of State is there at $77,000 with $250 a month for expenses. State Treasurer Tobias Reed also makes $77,000 a year with an extra $250 a month. And remember, Reed's top investment guy is the one who makes the most in the state, more than $500,000 every year. Attorney General Ellen Rosenblum makes a bit more, $82,200 with $250 a month for expenses. So how do those elected officials' salaries stack up across the country? Really not that good. We got to look at data from something called the Book of States. It's an annual report by the Council of State Governments. That's the nation's largest nonpartisan organization that serves all three branches of state elected and appointed officials. These numbers represent the base pay for elected officials from the latest year available, which is 2021. Here's how Oregon stacks up when it comes to base pay. For the state's CEO, the governor, New York takes the top spot, $225,000. Washington is fifth on the list, with Jay Inslee making just shy of $190,000 a year. Oregon, way down towards the bottom, 47th, ahead of only Arizona, Colorado, and Maine. You apparently don't want to govern Maine. They only pay $70,000 a year to run the state. So how about Secretary of State? Well, Tennessee takes the top spot there, more than $200,000 a year. Washington is in the top half of states at $134,000. Oregon ranks 45th. That's ahead only of Wisconsin and Arizona. And you may be thinking, well, you know, that's better than where we got ranked for the governor's pay. Actually, it's not. 3 states do not even have Secretary of States, Alaska, Hawaii, and Utah. So this list is based on 47 states total, not 50. Oregon is 45th out of 47. We don't have a nationwide data for the state treasurer, but we do have the attorney general's salaries. First place, New York, $210,000. Washington's Bob Ferguson is in the top 10 at $172,000. Oregon AG Ellen Rosenblum comes in dead last. Sorry, 50th out of 50 for her base salary of just over $82,000 a year. And 49th place is a ways off. Arizona's AG makes $90,000. So what's the takeaway here? Well, it sure doesn't pay to get involved in state politics, at least not at some of these top levels. So you can understand why those folks might be attracted to some side gigs. That's not to say that what Secretary of State Shemia Fagan did with the cannabis company is something that should be swept under the rug. Far from it. But let those lists serve as a little reminder the next time you find yourself thinking the governor or the treasurer rakes in hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. The simple answer is no, they don't. They have benefits and things like that that do make the job a bit more comfortable, but it's not exactly a get-rich-quick journey either. All right, what are your thoughts about all this? Do you think some of the state's top elected officials should get a raise to lift us from the basement of the national salary rankings? I sort of do. Or do you think that they're making plenty already? You can email us. The address is thestory@kgw.com or call and leave a voicemail. Our number is 503-226-5090. When